Sofia Martinez stood frozen outside the morgue of a public hospital in downtown Miami, clutching a worn manila envelope like it was her last lifeline. Inside were only three things: her mother's death certificate, an unpaid hospital bill, and the cheapest funeral invoice the city could offer. All adding up to a number Sofia couldn't bear to think about: $20,000. $20,000 so that her mother, Anna Martinez, could rest with dignity. No fancy coffin, no lavish service, just a modest grave in a low-cost cemetery, the least her mother deserved after a lifetime of quiet sacrifice. But Sofia, a housekeeper at a luxury beachfront resort, had exactly $150 to her name. No family left to help, no friends with pockets deep enough, and the hospital had made it painfully clear: no money, no burial. Anna would be sent to a mass cremation facility, unclaimed, unmarked, like she had never been here at all. Sofia stepped out into the night as the sun vanished behind Miami's glittering skyline, neon lights flickering in her swollen, sleepless eyes. She still wore her uniform, a cream-colored apron that smelled of bleach, canvas shoes with worn-out soles from scrubbing floors, changing sheets, and cleaning up after wealthy guests who never once asked her name. Her feet drifted along the oceanfront boulevard, salt wind and pounding club music mixing with the hollow ache inside her chest. She had done everything she could: double shifts, extra rooms, surviving on leftover pastries and stale coffee to save every dollar. Yet when her mother needed a clean bed and painkillers, Sofia had stood helpless, watching hope slip away. She sank down on the cold stone steps behind the resort where she worked, pulling out her cracked old phone, her fingers trembling against the shattered glass screen. She thought of calling someone for help, but who would lend her $20,000? She had nothing to offer except her own body. In that sharp, suffocating moment of despair, Sofia typed the words she never imagined would come from her fingertips: selling my virginity. One night, $20,000, 0 cents, no strings attached, serious inquiries only. She read it back to herself, every word like a bruise on her tongue. Her thumb hovered over post. She shut her eyes, drew a breath deep enough to burn, and tapped post. Seconds later, her life veered off the edge, into a darkness she wasn't sure she'd survive whole. Sofia's post drifted quietly through a private forum reserved for wealthy men who hunted for forbidden thrills. Within 3 minutes, her inbox exploded. Filthy questions, shameless offers, people bidding for her body like she was a used item on a shady auction block. Sofia read them with burning eyes, deleting each one, wanting to hurl her phone into the gutter. But buried among the crude noise, a single message stood out, stark and simple: address, time, name, Ethan Caldwell. She blinked, certain she was hallucinating. A quick search confirmed it. Ethan Caldwell, the young CEO of Caldwell Resorts International, sole heir to a beachside hotel empire stretching across Miami and other high-end vacation cities. The tabloids called him the Ice Prince because he had never flaunted a love affair, never been seen twice with the same woman. A man like him, why would he respond to a desperate stranger's post like hers? Panic coiled in her throat, but there was no way back now. The message included one more line: tomorrow night, 9 p.m., room 47A, Caldwell Oceanfront Suites. No attachments. She typed back a single word of confirmation, her fingers numb and rigid. When the screen flickered sent, Sofia leaned her head against the cold concrete wall behind her, feeling her ribs squeeze tighter than her lungs could bear. She refused to think. Not of her mother, not of herself, not of what she would lose tomorrow. There was only one thing left to protect. Anna would have a grave, not a furnace. The next morning, Sofia went to work as if tomorrow night she wasn't selling her soul to the devil. She changed linens for a wealthy honeymoon couple, scrubbed red wine from plush towels, polished grimy bathtubs under harsh fluorescent lights. Her wages for those aching hours could barely buy 2 cheap bouquets. But tomorrow night's transaction would pay for an entire funeral. When her shift ended, Sofia sat motionless in the locker room, staring at the secondhand black dress she'd rushed to buy. It didn't fit her bony shoulders, and the seams were slightly crooked, but she couldn't spare another dollar. Every penny had to go to her mother's burial plot. Everything else, her dignity, her dreams, even herself, would be traded tomorrow night for the peace Anna deserved. She hugged the dress to her chest, whispering to herself like a final prayer, "Mama, I'm sorry, but I promise I'm bringing you home." The night Sofia had dreaded arrived faster than she expected. Miami's heavy air smothered each breath she drew. Down below, the ocean hummed under the moonlight, the salt and breeze threading between towers of glass and marble, reminding her there was no way back. In front of her loomed the revolving glass doors of Caldwell oceanfront suites, a beacon of opulence she once swept floors for, hauled trash bags through, closed drapes in penthouses she'd never dare set foot in. Tonight, she would walk in through the front, not the service hallway. Her black dress hugged her shoulders too tight, the borrowed heels too loose, each click of her steps slicing at the thin layer of dignity she had left. The front desk clerk bowed politely, swiped her room card, asked nothing, though his eyes flicked, just briefly, to her swollen, tired eyes. Sofia lowered her gaze, palms cold and clammy against her thighs. The gold-plated elevator lifted her to the 47th floor, a sanctuary for the ultra-wealthy, where silence cost more than most earned in a year. Her heart drummed painfully against her ribs. Fingers trembling, she touched the handle of room 47A. Its door cracked just enough for invitation. It opened wider. Ethan Caldwell stood there, tall, broad, a white shirt rolled to his elbows, a half-empty whiskey glass dangling from his fingers. His ash-gray eyes were so cold, Sofia's neck prickled with goosebumps. He didn't speak. He simply stepped aside, wordless, allowing her inside. The suite spread before her. Plush velvet carpet, soft golden lamps, vast windows open to the restless sea. Sofia heard it all, the waves, the steady hum of the AC, the steady tick of a clock she could not see. Ethan set his glass down, pulled out his wallet, and methodically counted out crisp stacks of bills, lining them up neatly on the ebony table. Sofia stood frozen, her grip on her purse strap so tight her knuckles whitened. She stared at the money. Salvation and executioner in one pile. When he finished, Ethan's voice startled her. Low, even, "Are you afraid?" Sofia blinked, words tangled uselessly in her throat. He studied her longer this time, like he was trying to see a real girl beneath this sordid arrangement. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Why do this?" She swallowed, mouth dry as sand. Her eyes flicked to the table, then the soft glow of the lamp. "Because of my mother," her voice cracked. "She's gone. I have no one. The hospital won't bury her if I don't pay. I have no other way." Ethan sat down on the edge of the armchair, fingers laced. He was silent so long she wondered if he'd stand up and tell her to leave. Then he asked softly, "What was she like?" A question so simple it cracked something in Sofia's chest. Words trickled out, a whisper carried on the hush of waves. Her mother was a seamstress, worked for pennies, her hands always swollen from needle pricks. A gentlewoman who never rested except to pray for Sofia's tomorrow. When she finished, she realized Ethan hadn't moved, his gray eyes no longer icy but distant, haunted by something unspoken. He murmured, "I had a mother too. She loved stages and lights more than me. My father treated me like a last name to keep clean. I stopped trusting anyone when I was a boy, even family." They fell silent. In that quiet, the ocean filled the space between them, binding two strangers through the ghost of mothers they'd both lost in different ways. At last, Ethan stood. He stepped closer, lifted a hand, brushed a stray hair from Sofia's damp forehead. The touch was so gentle she almost flinched. She shut her eyes. She did not want to see the man who had bought her for a night, yet bothered to ask about her mother. What followed was slow, clinical, almost careful, but never tender. No promises, no rescue fantasy, just the hiss of the AC, the brine of whiskey on his collar, the hush of the ocean beyond the balcony door. When it was over, Ethan didn't speak. He placed a black duffel bag at her feet, heavy with cash. Sofia pulled her dress back over trembling shoulders, her knees nearly buckling under her. She murmured, "Thank you for not making me feel smaller than I already do." Ethan nodded once. His eyes dropped to the carpet, as if avoiding the truth between them. At dawn, Sofia slipped out quietly. The door whispered shut behind her without a single goodbye. She clutched the bag to her chest, bare feet silent on the marble hallway, her heart hollow yet unbowed. Her mother would have a grave, and Sofia would learn to live again, even if the purest part of her lay behind that door forever. 3 days after that night, Sofia stood by a freshly turned grave under an old mango tree at Miami Memorial Park. The cemetery lay quiet, far from the city's roaring beaches and neon chaos. Her mother's plot rested beside a patchy walkway of half-grown grass, marked by a simple stone carved with the name Ana Martinez and 2 lines Sofia had chosen during a sleepless night. A loving mother, loved without condition. Sofia wore the same black dress, the one she had worn the night she sold herself. Somewhere deep in the faded fabric, she could still smell the expensive hotel perfume, like a wound refusing to heal. In her hands, she held a single white lily. Sofia lowered her head, whispering apologies and quiet promises that she would try to live decently, even if her soul already felt stained. Long after everyone else left, Sofia remained standing there until her shadow stretched long and thin across the damp soil. The late breeze stirred the mango leaves overhead, dropping a few dry ones onto the new headstone. She forced herself to walk away because life, painfully, still demanded her presence. A week later, Sofia began a new job, a temporary administrative assistant at Caldwell Resort's Glass Tower downtown. She had applied for it months ago, back when her mother still clung to painkillers and fevered dreams. She had no idea this was Ethan Caldwell's empire, the man who had bought her for a single night. Sofia only wanted to escape hotel housekeeping and minimum wage. She longed for a desk, a computer, and a sliver of hope to rebuild her torn-apart life. On her first day, Sofia arrived early. She wore a second-hand white blouse, a thrift store pencil skirt, and worn-out flats. Stepping into the bright marble lobby, she felt like everyone here moved with purpose, polish, and the certainty of their worth. Only she, once priced for a night, kept her head down, avoiding every glance. The receptionist greeted her politely, handed her a temp staff badge, and pointed her to the 39th floor. The office opened into neat rows of workstations, clean computers, and strangers with polite smiles but no curiosity. An HR manager named Chloe welcomed her with a soft handshake, passed her a folder, and guided her to a corner desk by the window. Sofia buried herself in spreadsheets and emails, refusing to look up or make small talk. She felt relief wash over her. If life could stay this simple, just numbers and polite tasks, maybe she would be safe. Safety, however, lasted only half a day. As she typed up her second report, a man's voice rose behind her, deep, unmistakable, slicing through the false calm she had wrapped around herself. "Ms. Martinez?" Her fingers froze above the keyboard. She turned slowly, her heartbeat pounding against her ribs when she met those same ash-gray eyes. The eyes that had once looked at her like a transaction, then let her go without a single promise. Ethan Caldwell stood less than 10 feet away, dressed in a gray suit, no tie, his face unreadable. Neither spoke first. The open-plan office seemed to hold its breath. Then Ethan nodded slightly at Chloe, who had just appeared behind Sofia's chair. "I'd like a word with her. Alone." Chloe hesitated, but then pointed to a small meeting room nearby. Sofia rose to her feet, her pulse drumming so loud she could barely breathe. As she passed Ethan, the subtle cedar scent on his suit cut through her lungs like ice, and she knew the night she thought she'd buried for good had come alive again, right in the middle of the new life she was fighting to build. The small meeting room door closed, sealing out curious stares and the hum of keyboard clicks beyond. Sofia leaned against the edge of the conference table, her hands clasped tightly together to stop them from trembling. Across from her, Ethan stood motionless, hands tucked in his pockets, his eyes cutting straight through every fragile wall she had built. He was the first to break the silence. "What are you doing here?" His voice wasn't raised, nor as icy as that night, but it carried a controlled tension that made her lungs shrink. Sofia squeezed her fingers together, lifted her chin, and answered, "I got this job through a temp agency. I didn't know this was your company until after I accepted." A flicker of doubt crossed Ethan's eyes, but it faded quickly, replaced by something harder to name, something like restrained frustration. "You should have turned it down." His words cut through her fragile calm like a blade slicing silk. She gave a bitter, unsteady laugh, but her back stayed straight. "Afraid it's inconvenient for you? I'm not here to cause trouble, Ethan. I need this job. I need to start over. And I'll do my work. Nothing more, nothing less." Ethan stared at her for so long, Sofia felt like he was peeling back every hidden shame inside her chest. At last he exhaled, his voice lowering, almost confessing. "This isn't about trouble, it's about context." Sofia clenched her fists so tight, her nails dug into her palms. "Then keep the context out of it. You don't owe me anything, and I don't want anything from you. Pretend I'm nobody. It'll be easier for both of us." It should have ended there. Sofia almost prayed he'd nod, open the door, and forget her, like he forgot a transaction paid in full. But his eyes stayed locked on hers, like he was looking at something he couldn't let himself reach for. Finally, he gave a single stiff nod, his tone flattening out. "Fine, I won't interfere." When Sofia returned to her desk, her hands still trembled. All afternoon, Ethan didn't speak to her again, but he was there, a quiet presence drifting through the hallway, brushing past her work area like a ghost she could not banish. Days passed slowly, suffocating in their quiet. Sofia did her tasks well. Data entry, filing, answering polite client emails, everything was perfectly normal, except for one detail that wasn't normal at all. Her old laptop was swapped for a brand new one, her chair replaced with an ergonomic upgrade, her software suddenly faster. Each time she asked HR, they only shrugged. Company-wide upgrade, but she knew better. No one else's desk had changed but hers. One Friday evening, long after most employees had left, Sofia stayed behind, finishing up a final report. She liked the office empty. No hallway glances, no chance encounters with Ethan's eyes. But tonight, the soft tread of leather shoes broke her fragile cocoon. Sofia looked up. There he stood, holding 2 cups of coffee, his shadow stretching long under the warm ceiling light. "I figured you're still surviving on cheap diner coffee," Ethan said, placing 1 cup gently on her desk. "This one's better." Sofia stared at the cup, then up at him, her voice quiet but steady. "You don't have to do this." Ethan only answered, voice soft like the ocean wind at night. "I know. I want to." He left before she could protest. The rich bitterness of the coffee mixed with the sterile chill of the AC, and Sofia felt all her careful boundaries shift just an inch, unsure if she still had the strength to hold them upright anymore. Since that night, everything began to shift. No declarations, no promises, just quiet gestures that made it impossible for Sofia to keep pretending she and Ethan were just boss and employee. He didn't call her into private meetings anymore, but every morning there was a fresh cup of coffee waiting on her desk, sometimes with a shortbread cookie wrapped neatly in a napkin. When she worked late, Ethan would appear in the lobby, asking softly, "May I give you a ride?" Never pressing, never touching unless she nodded. One evening, a sudden summer downpour caught her off guard. Sofia had no umbrella and was about to sprint to the bus stop when Ethan's sleek black car pulled up at the curb. He lowered the window, looking at her through the curtain of rain. "Get in, you'll be soaked." She hesitated, then opened the door, sliding in close to the window, trying to keep her distance. Ethan stayed silent the entire drive, glancing at her occasionally in the rear-view mirror. When she shivered from the cold, he shrugged off his coat and draped it over her shoulders before she could refuse. At the entrance of her aging rental apartment, she handed back the coat. He took it, his fingers brushing hers. Sofia looked up and found his eyes, no longer glacial like that first night, but like a tide swelling behind a fragile dam. Ethan spoke barely above a whisper, as if afraid his own words might shatter something delicate. "That night, I know why you did it, but you deserved a better choice." Sofia's throat tightened. She didn't answer, just nodded once, slowly, then stepped back and closed the door between them. From that night on, the thin line between them blurred with every excuse Ethan found to stop by her desk. A question about a report he already knew was flawless. A breakfast muffin left with her name on it. A cup of tea when she coughed in the winter draft. One quiet Saturday, he invited her to lunch at a small, family-run Italian bistro, away from prying eyes. Over the warmth of pasta and garlic bread, Ethan spoke about his mother, a woman who loved the spotlight more than family, leaving him to a father lost in lawsuits and extramarital affairs. Sofia didn't interrupt. When he fell silent, she reached across the table and gently touched the back of his hand. This time, Ethan didn't pull away. They never named what they were becoming. Sofia didn't dare. She kept reminding herself that Ethan Caldwell had never kept a woman in his life for long. She was just a scratch in his memory, something he would eventually forget. Yet every morning, when she found that hot cup of coffee on her desk, Sofia knew she was no longer strong enough to pretend none of this was happening. But the world outside never sleeps long enough to let two people hide forever. Secrets have a cruel way of finding the light. It started with an anonymous email sent to the company inbox, a screenshot of Sofia's old post the night she sold her virginity, captioned with venom, "Boss's pretty little secret, Ethan Caldwell's $20,000 0-cent toy. Rumors spread like wildfire across dry grass." Curious eyes began to follow Sofia into the elevator. Whispers floated through the break room and vanished whenever she entered. Sofia tried to steady herself. "It's just gossip. It will pass." But it didn't pass. It grew thick and choking, like smoke in her lungs. On a Monday morning, she opened her company email and found her own name in the subject line. FWD, Virgin for sale. $20,000 0-cents. Her fingers shook as she clicked it open. The photo, that line of text, and the comments below. Blunt knives, cutting again and again. That entire day, Ethan was nowhere to be seen. No glimpse of him through his office door, no cup of coffee waiting at her desk. But his silence hurt more than the rumors themselves. She sat in a closed meeting room with the head of HR, a well-dressed woman whose polite tone couldn't mask her pity. "We understand this is a lot, Sofia. Would you like to take some personal time off?" She pressed her lips together and shook her head. "No, I need to work." But that fragile calm only lasted until that night. Back in her small apartment, Sofia found a tabloid wedged under her door. The front page showed her beside Ethan in the rain, his coat draped around her shoulders. The headline blazed in blood red, "Scandal erupts CEO Caldwell and the $20,000 0-cents virgin." Sofia slid to the cold tile floor, the paper slipping from her numb fingers. Shame, rage, and dread knotted in her gut, rising up her throat like bile. Her phone buzzed with message after message from Ethan, each one the same line repeated, "Answer me. I'm looking for you." But Sofia didn't answer. She powered off her phone, shoved it deep in a drawer, and pulled out her battered old suitcase. She packed a few clothes and the small wooden box that held her mother's photo. At dawn, before the city woke, Sofia boarded the first bus out of Miami, headed for Tampa, where an old friend once promised her a couch and no questions asked. Through the long ride, Sofia did not sleep. She wondered if Ethan truly looked for her, or if it was just pity, duty. This time, she wouldn't make it easy for him. No more warm morning coffee. No more hot tea left by her elbow. No more half-spoken promises in brightly lit hallways. For now, she needed only one thing: silence. In Tampa, Sofia found refuge on the worn-out sofa in Alina's small apartment, an old friend who managed a quaint local bookstore. Alina didn't ask for details. She simply handed Sofia a spare key, brewed her a mug of hot ginger tea, and said, "Stay as long as you want. I don't need to know what happened." Days slipped by quietly. Sofia took a part-time job at the bookstore, stacking shelves, helping customers, dusting off piles of old paperbacks. Here, no one knew she was the $20,000 0 cents girl. No one whispered behind her back. Every night she sat tucked in a corner, reading until closing time, sometimes smiling at the sight of children running around the low shelves. But pain didn't vanish just because she hid. In the dark, Sofia still dreamed of Ethan's face, the look in his eyes that rainy night, his voice whispering, "You deserved a better choice." Each memory made her chest tremble and softened a corner of her heart she'd sworn to lock away. Meanwhile, in Miami, Ethan never announced his search, but he didn't stop. He revisited her old apartment, knocked on the door until neighbors stared. He went back to the coffee shop where Sofia liked to sit, questioned the old barista, drove past streets he knew she wouldn't return to. Yet he drove them anyway, clinging to hope like a fool. The press refused to let go. Caldwell Resorts Board pressured Ethan to issue a public statement cutting ties with Sofia to protect the stock price. He refused, ignoring rivals who mocked him, tabloids that invented wild headlines, and investors who doubted his judgment. Then, one morning, Ethan gave his first live interview in nearly a year. No scripted speech, no polished PR spin, just raw truth about Sofia, about that night, and about how she'd had no other choice. He ended with a single line. "I don't regret meeting her, I only regret letting her believe she had to disappear to protect me." In Tampa, Sofia watched that clip on her old phone, tears slipping down her hand, burning hot, and she knew, without doubt, Ethan had never seen her as a burden. Never. That night, for the first time since she'd run, Sofia picked up her phone and dialed his number. When his voice came through, she whispered, her words breaking apart. "I saw it." Sofia returned to Miami on a late spring night, the ocean breeze warm yet tinged with salt. Ethan waited at the station. No bodyguards, no chauffeured car, just him, a dark coat draped over his shoulders, and eyes steady with a patience that promised he'd stand there forever if it meant she'd come home. They said little. Sofia stepped into his arms, burying her face against his neck like a child who had found shelter after a storm. In the days that followed, life slowed down for them. No luxury hotel suites, no stage lights, just quiet evenings walking hand in hand along the beach, sharing a melting ice cream under a fiery sunset. Ethan stopped hiding behind dry boardroom meetings. Sofia stopped lowering her head for the cameras. Together, they relearned how to breathe, trust, and smile without fear of the world's noise. One morning, Sofia took Ethan to the cemetery, to the mango tree's shade where her mother lay. The wind rustled through the leaves, casting gentle shadows over the weathered gravestone. Sofia laid fresh white lilies down, eyes shimmering as she looked at Ethan. Ethan knelt beside the headstone, tracing the carved name Anna Martinez with his fingertips. His voice was low, unwavering, a vow spoken to the quiet earth. "Ma'am, please rest easy. I swear she'll never be alone again. I will protect her, love her, and guard her the way you did. No one and nothing will ever reach her without coming through me first." Sofia stood beside him, tears sliding to her lips, but these were not tears of shame or fear anymore. They tasted of peace. Rumors lingered, but Ethan ended them for good when he faced the board and said calmly, "If loving Sofia means losing this company, I'm ready to build a new one from scratch." The day Sofia learned she was pregnant, she sat frozen in the clinic, hand covering her flat belly, heart pounding with terror and a fragile warmth. When she told Ethan, she braced for hesitation, but he only pulled her close and whispered, "Thank you for trusting me and for this gift." They married in a friend's garden, surrounded by white flowers, a handful of loved ones, and the golden light of a setting sun that turned Sofia's simple veil into spun gold. No extravagant gown, no expensive champagne, only honest vows, to live gently, to guard each other from the storms that life might bring. And Sofia knew, beyond doubt, she was no longer a price on a paper, but the only woman he would keep, fiercely, for the rest of his life. Isabella was born on a gentle, rainy morning at the tail end of summer. Outside the delivery room window, raindrops clung to the glass, sparkling under the sterile hospital lights. Inside, Sofia lay drained, but never loosened her hold on Ethan's hand, the hand that had pulled her through every storm. Isabella's first cry sliced through every last shred of fear. Sofia looked at their tiny daughter, resting safe and pink in Ethan's arms, and knew in her bones that every sacrifice had been worth it. Ethan wept, shoulders trembling as he pressed his lips to Sofia's forehead. His voice cracked with a gratitude too big for words. "You gave me a family, Sofia. You gave me everything I didn't know how to ask for. I love you." Life shifted completely in the days that followed. Together, Sofia and Ethan understood that the city had given them everything, love and wounds alike. But it was time to leave. They traded city towers for a small wooden house tucked among wildflowers and open skies, where nights brought cricket songs and mornings bloomed with fresh garden scents. From that little house, Ethan still ran Caldwell Resorts through video calls and occasional short trips to the city. But he no longer buried himself behind boardroom walls or left Sofia waiting in the dark. The company thrived, but now family came first. Sofia spent her days with Isabella, teaching her to pick wildflowers, laughing when her daughter came back covered in dirt from head to toe. Sometimes she planted tomatoes behind the house, while Ethan called out reports on quarterly profits from the porch. He would pause mid-sentence, just to watch Isabella squeal as she splashed barefoot through the garden hose spray. In this small town, neighbors didn't care about the past. Here, Sofia wasn't the $20,000 0-cents girl from scandalous headlines. She was Sofia Caldwell, a devoted mother, a steadfast wife, the gentle heart that made the house a true home. One late afternoon, after Isabella drifted off to sleep in her own room, Sofia sat with Ethan on the porch. The countryside breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and damp earth, washing away the last city ghosts. Ethan wrapped his arm around her, murmuring softly against her hair, "We've found the most precious thing, you know? A place to call home, truly home." Sofia closed her eyes, her fingers interlocking with his. In her chest, the old scars still rested, but now they were just reminders that true love, when real, could heal every wound. Isabella, Sofia, and Ethan. 3 souls, 1 roof, and a peace they had fought for, tooth and nail, and earned with every ounce of their trust and courage.